Hey everyone, welcome back to Booga Buggie Kid Stories. Stories about a silly bug that likes to do lots of silly things. And guess what? We're excited that it's season 2. We've wrapped up season 1 and took a little break, and we're back ready for action. And I hope you're just as excited as I am for this silly Booga Buggie story, where Booga Buggie sneaks into a basketball game and decides to play a trick on all the basketball players. All right, let's get going and see what happens. It was summertime now, and summertime is hot weather and lots of things to cool you down from staying too hot. Elon and Pfeiffer loved one thing in particular. They liked to do water balloon fights. So they got a whole bunch of water balloons ready, went into the backyard, and started throwing water balloons around, and splash, splash, splash. Elon and Pfeiffer would get soaked, but it was hilarious, and they just laugh and laugh and laugh. And psh, one water balloon soared all the way up to that plum tree where Booga Buggie lived. And Booga Buggie was sleeping in. So he had no idea what happened. So he got up, drenched, crawled over to the window and looked, and with amazement was watching Elon and Pfeiffer play with those water balloons. And he thought, what an ingenious idea. Some sort of a ball that explodes and soaks the other person. And he was watching and seeing how much fun they were having. And then Booga Buggie decided that he would save this memory for some silly trick in the future. It was time to come in for lunch, so Elon and Pfeiffer got dry and changed their clothes so they wouldn't be wet, and they were headed over to their friend's house, Ben and Sage. Now, what you need to know about Ben and Sage is that they love playing basketball. They play basketball all the time. It's almost as if they play basketball even when they're sleeping, and they're really good at it. And so Elon and Pfeiffer went over to Ben and Sage's house. And, yep, as you probably would have guessed, Ben and Sage were on the driveway shooting hoops. Elon and Pfeiffer hadn't played a lot of basketball before, and it was a little tricky to dribble. So Ben and Sage were teaching them some tricks about dribbling and going between the legs and around the back and to shoot. And it was lots of fun learning to play basketball. Just then, Ben and Sage heard the phone ring. Ring, 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 ring. And Ben and Sage's dad and mom said, Ben and Sage, come quickly. There's someone on the phone for you both. So Ben and Sage put the phone on speaker. And guess who was on the phone? It was the Golden State Warriors. They were a basketball team in the NBA. It was their favorite team. And on the phone was the coach. And the coach said, Ben and Sage, we have a really important mission for you. 2 of our star players have gotten sick. They have the flu and they can't play basketball, and we have a game later today against the Toronto Raptors. Can you guys come and play on our team? I know you guys have been practicing a lot and you're really good. Ben and Sage looked at each other. They were so excited and they said, yeah, we'll be right there. So they quickly hopped on a plane and flew down to where the Golden State Warriors played. Now, it was extra special that Elon and Pfeiffer were at Ben and Sage's house. They were able to hop on that airplane as well and go with Ben and Sage. They were going to sit on the front row watching their friends play basketball. They arrived at the big basketball arena, and Ben and Sage got these really cool basketball uniforms that they put on to be a part of the team. Elon and Pfeiffer got to go in the special VIP area because they were friends with these 2 new basketball stars. And they took their seats. It was the front row, and they could see absolutely everything. It was amazing. And the basketball game was just about to get started. The referee blew his whistle, tweet, and jump ball. Golden State Warriors got the ball, and they passed it to Ben, who dribbled down the floor, passed it to Sage. Sage shoots and scores. All right, they scored and got the first points of the game. Elon and Pfeiffer were cheering so loud. This was super exciting. Oh, this was a really good game. But even though the game was super exciting, Ben, Sage, Elon, and Pfeiffer didn't realize something. They didn't know that Booga Buggie had followed Elon and Pfeiffer all the way over to Ben and Sage's house. And they didn't know that he had followed them all the way onto that airplane and then all the way to where the Golden State Warriors played and even into the VIP area. Booga Buggie thought basketball was pretty cool. He'd never watched a basketball game before. So he was sitting there underneath Elon's chair, and no one had noticed him there. So the game was still going on, and the Toronto Raptors and Golden State Warriors were both doing really good. It was so close. They were only separated by 2 points. The Toronto Raptors were in the lead, and Elon and Pfeiffer were a little bit nervous that the Golden State Warriors wouldn't win. But Ben and Sage were still really confident. They knew what good players they were, and they knew that they could still score. There was enough time left. There was just over 1 minute left in the game. And luckily, Sage got the ball, passed it over to Ben, and Ben shoots the ball, and it goes in. Woohoo! They were tied with only a couple seconds left. Everyone was cheering really loud, and that startled Booga Buggie underneath the chair. He didn't know what to do and why everyone was so excited. He was just seeing people run around back and forth, throwing a ball, shooting it in this little hoop, and doing it all over again. He didn't quite understand it, but it was fun, and he was excited too. And then he remembered, ooh, I know what to do. I can play a little trick on all these basketball players because they're having so much fun. We'll see if they have fun after this silly trick. The Toronto Raptors had called a quick little timeout, which meant that they would huddle together in a little group to talk about what kind of play they would try to do to score with the little time left. And during the timeout, Booga Buggie got out some special Booga Buggie dust. And he crawled really sneakily from under that chair where Elon was sitting onto the basketball court. Then he crawled up the leg of one of the referees that was holding the game ball. And he sprinkled a teeny tiny bit of special Booga Buggie dust onto that basketball. And he crawled back down. And then he crawled sneakily over to the side where they had all the other basketballs that they would use in case that one got wrecked or lost. And he sprinkled lots of dust on those ones too. He, thought Booga Buggie, this is going to be so silly. And he wondered what was going to happen and how everyone would react. So then he sneakily crawled back underneath Elon's chair to watch the chaos that was going to happen. The timeout had ended, and all of the players, including Ben and Sage, were back on the basketball court, ready to play to see if someone could score another basket and win it in regular time before it would go to overtime, which is sort of like an extra period that they play if they're tied at the end of the regular time. So the Toronto Raptors passed the ball, and as it was in the air, both Ben and Sage ran as quick as they could, and they jumped to grab the ball and intercept it before the other Toronto Raptor teammate could grab it. And as they grabbed it, what they thought was a basketball that looked like a basketball exploded into water, and they were soaked. Both Ben and Sage were dripping from head to toe in those fancy new jerseys they had. And not only that, some of the Toronto Raptor players that were right around them also were soaked from head to toe. They were drenched and also really confused. So the ref blew his whistle to stop the play. And the ref went and got another basketball, and they said, okay, we're going to have to redo that. Let's try that again. So this time the Toronto Raptor player grabbed the ball and went to pass it to another teammate. And this time that Toronto Raptor teammate grabbed the ball and again it exploded and splashed everywhere. And this time one of the players was so close to the crowd that the player and a whole bunch of the crowd were soaked in water. The ref blew his whistle and was so confused. They said, okay, we'll try it again, a third time, and this time we'll get a different basketball. So he went over to the little stand that had all the extra basketballs and grabbed one, and it felt like a normal basketball to the ref. So he passed it to the Toronto player, and he grabbed it and threw it in, and this time Sage grabbed the ball and splash again. He was soaking wet. The ref blew his whistle, and by this time, the regular time in that last period had run out. And so they said, okay, well, let's just go to overtime. Let's pause for a little bit. The refs will try to figure out the ball situation and get a real basketball, and the other team members can huddle and we'll try to get this sorted, is what the ref said. All of the players went to their change rooms to wait for the overtime period to start. The two refs at the game took all of those extra basketballs and put them away into a little basketball closet. And then they grabbed some extra basketballs that they had. But Booga Buggie was watching the refs the whole time. And as each ball was put onto the extra rack, Booga Buggie would sprinkle a little bit of that Booga Buggie dust. One ball there, dust on top. Another ball there, a little bit more dust. Booga Buggie was laughing, but you can't really hear ants because they're so small. So even though he was laughing lots, the refs couldn't actually hear him. And the refs put down the last extra basketball. Booga Buggie put more dust on top of that one and then crawled back under the seat underneath Elon. And he was so excited for overtime. So in overtime, what they did is they lined up in the middle and they did what's called a jump ball, where they throw a basketball up in the air and two really tall people jump up and try to grab the ball and pass it to their team. So they did that, and as soon as someone grabbed the ball again, it exploded and water everywhere. And this time, the crowd started laughing. The basketball players were still super confused, and the refs didn't know what to do. Every time they got a new ball, it kept exploding like a water balloon. But the crowd was loving it. And so Booga Buggie was laughing, and the crowd was laughing, and the players were just looking at each other, not knowing what to do. But then Sage and Ben realized something. They knew that their friends, Elon and Pfeiffer, were really, really good at playing with water balloons. So they walked over to the coach and said, Coach, what if we would bring Elon and Pfeiffer onto our team? And then what if we would challenge the Toronto Raptors, instead of to a basketball game, to a water balloon fight? And the coach said, that's a wonderful idea. So the coach met with the other coach and with the refs and all the other basketball players, and they agreed they would have a water balloon fight, and the winner would win the game at the end of overtime. And so they got Elon and Pfeiffer some fancy Golden State Warrior jerseys, and they all lined up grabbing those basketballs, all of the extra ones, those that refs had gotten, that Booga Buggie had sprinkled the dust onto. And so they grabbed them and they had this wonderful water balloon fight right on the basketball court. The basketball court was so wet, people are slipping and sliding, and water balloons were flying up into the crowd, splashing them and soaking them, and the crowd was laughing. Booga Buggie, though, he was prepared. He had brought a little umbrella to make sure that whenever a water balloon splashed by him, he could stay a little bit dry. But he didn't realize that the crowd and the players would have so much fun in the end. And so he thought, next time I might need to do something even sillier. But he kept watching because it was a lot of fun to watch everyone get into this crazy water balloon fight. The clock was counting down. 3, 2, 1. Tweet! The refs blew their whistles. It was the end of overtime. Now, there were no official rules to how you can win a water balloon fight. So the two refs huddled together to decide who would win this game. They came back, and as loud as they could, they said, and the winner is the Golden State Warriors! And the crowd went wild. They were so excited and confused because they didn't know how a team could win a water balloon fight, but the Golden State Warriors did. And Ben and Sage and Elon and Pfeiffer were jumping up and down, and all the other Golden State Warrior team members gave them shoulder rides because they were so excited that they had won this new kind of basketball water balloon game. And they had such a fun time celebrating. Unfortunately, the next game, those two players that had the flu actually had gotten better, so Ben and Sage had to go back home, and Elon and Pfeiffer went home with them. But as souvenirs, all of the players had signed a basketball for Ben, Sage, Elon, and Pfeiffer. But they had to be very careful with each of theirs because they didn't know if it was a special basketball that would explode if they played with it or a real one. So they took it home and they kept it, just in case someone would challenge them to a basketball game or a water balloon fight. All right, we made it to the end of the Booga Buggie basketball water balloon fight story. Thanks for listening, and feel free to follow along on Instagram. And to help others find Booga Buggie silly stories, make sure that you leave a rating or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Bye for now.